Well, hello, and welcome back to Mission Debrief Temporal Archive, where we're charting the past before diving into the future. We're deep into our retro review of Strange New Worlds Season 1, prepping for Season 3's long delayed arrival. With the premiere for many Sky Showtime viewers still stuck in the temporal buffer until August 4th. We will be keeping the warp engines warm by revisiting the episodes that led to Season 3. So if Episode 1 was about setting the table, Episode 2 is where the crew actually starts to eat. When Children of the Comet first aired in 2022, fans were cautiously optimistic. The pilot has landed well enough, but longtime Trek fans were watching closely, hoping this wasn't just a nostalgia project. Enter Cadet Uhura, one of the fan favorites. A legacy character with decades of cultural weight. This time played by Celia Rose Gooding, whose performance is one of the strongest early assets of the show. You can tell that there's a real respect in her portrayal, but she's not doing an impression of Nichelle Nichols. She kind of found her own voice in the role. Even this early in episode 2, she's already making Uhura feel like a fully realized character. And that's precisely what you want. You don't want a pale imitation, but a worthy evolution. This is kind of a classic second episode track. We get smaller stakes, we get a tighter character focus, and some philosophical undercurrents coming just beneath the surface. The episode opens not with Pike or Spock, but with Cadet Uhura's personal log. A subtle choice that tells us this is her story. The Enterprise is on a mission to observe a comet headed for a desert planet. Standard science mission. Until the comet turns out to be something much more complicated. During the welcome dinner aboard the ship, informally dubbed the captain's table, Uhura is welcomed in. It's warm, teasing, and kind of sets the tone for how close-knit this crew is becoming. Now, interesting little nugget, fans of Captain's Table book series and even Star Trek Online will obviously recognize this name. It's a place where the crew shares food, stories, and growing trust. The show isn't explicitly referencing the novels, but it kind of hits the same beat. Now, soon after things escalate, when the Enterprise attempts to divert the comet's path, they encounter a force field, and then the Shepherds appear on the scene. The alien group believes they are entrusted with protecting the comet, known to them as Mahanit. It's unclear if they see it as alive, but they're adamant that it must remain undisturbed. The team beams down aboard the comet, or structure, and Uhura's linguistic and musical talents take center stage. They discover that Mahanit communicates through harmonies, music essentially, and Uhura with her talent and confidence becomes the key. It's a clever way to tie some of her unique strengths into a story organically. Meanwhile, Pike continues wrestling with his foreknowledge of what lies ahead. Spock stumbles through social landmines with his usual endearing awkwardness, while the crew races to solve the mystery and prevent a potential disaster, without violating Starfleet protocol. Well, at least that's what they're telling themselves. So by the end, the Comet's core shifts with little help from Spock, and kind of triggers the rain on the drought-stricken planet below. Now, was this intervention or was this the fate? Now, like I've said before, this is Uhura's episode, full stop. And it is a smart choice, and not just because, she's a legacy character, but because the story lets her grow, lets her doubt, and ultimately shine in a way that feels earned. Celia Rose Gooding brings subtlety and confidence to the role, and the writing gives her some space to be unsure without kind of making her look weak. From the moment she walks into the captain's table dinner in full dress uniform, thanks to a little nudge from Ortega's, you feel her outsider energy. It's funny, it's human, and a little bit cruel in that welcome to the team kind of way. But it works. That scene doesn't just introduce Uhura, it also introduces the tone of the new crew. It's warm, teasing, but ultimately supportive. We also get some excellent character beats beyond Uhura. Nurse Chapel continues to charm with her flirty confidence, especially when administering the anti-radiation serum. She kind of brings an updated energy that still echoes her TOS roots. Luan, meanwhile, remains cool, collected, and commanding, a strong tactical officer presence without kind of feeling cold. Even Hammer, with just a few lines, establishes his voice clearly. His dry quip, "Since I'm the one doing it," channels a little bit of a Scotty vibe, with a distinctly Einar twist. And then there's Spock. His social fumbles and calm logic are in full swing here. But what really stands out is his mentorship with Uhura. First, he tells her that if this is not your path, you might consider making way for someone else who wishes to walk it. It's a firm nudge rather than a warm hug, but it lands exactly as it should. Also worth calling out is Pike's quiet gut punch of a scene with Una. When she floats the idea that his fate might not be fixed, he calmly names the cadets he'll one day save. He's not trying to escape his destiny, he's trying to make sure it's worth it. That's the Pike we're starting to understand. One who leads through compassion, but with a steel spine underneath. Visually, the episode holds up beautifully. The interior of the Comet glows with the otherworldly mystery. The lighting and sound design during the harmonic sequences are subtle but striking. And once again, Trek shows us that music and language can be just as powerful as technology. But then we come to the Sam Kirk. His inclusion is a mixed bag. In TOS, he was barely a character. Literally, William Shatner with a mustache, who died off screen in, I think it was Operation Annihilate. His presence kind of feels like the writers were trying to kind of pad the show's Trek credentials. See, we got Kirk. But while his inclusion might raise eyebrows, his actual role in the episode is mostly positive. He supports Uhura during her first away mission, treats her with kindness and respect, and helps her find confidence. That's great, but then makes a careless mistake, stepping on something he shouldn't, and nearly derails the mission. It's a clumsy move, both in character and writing. It kinda undercuts what had been an otherwise thoughtful beat. And here's where the show gets subtle, in a good way. There's a clear theme that runs throughout the episode, one that threads from Pike to Uhura to Spock. It starts with Captain's table, where Pike says sometimes things go so badly you just have to laugh. A very human sentiment, one Spock doesn't quite grasp. Later, after Sam Kirk gets injured, it's Uhura who has to repeat that. It's not just a callback, it's kind of a growth. She's internalized the idea, found calm in chaos, and passed it on. And finally, we hear Spock. After the mission ends, after the comet moves and the tension breaks, he laughs. Genuinely. And when questioned, he echoes Pike's line. Sometimes things go so badly, you just have to laugh. Now, in retrospect, some fans didn't love this moment. Laughing Spock is a still tricky thing. But let's be clear, this isn't unprecedented. In The Cage, we see Spock smiling, and if you want to contend that, well, The Cage is not officially the part of Star Trek timeline, we also see him show real emotion in Amok Time. Joy even. Spock has always had emotions. That's why playing Vulcans is so tricky. Sometimes people treat Vulcans as they are robots, that they don't have emotion. But that's the beautiful nuance that Leonard Nimoy managed to kind of create. They do have emotions. Spock has always had emotions. What made him Spock wasn't that lack of feeling, it was the discipline to master them. So yes, I think it works in this episode, because here it feels like Spock is maybe experimenting with being human, trying on a philosophy of his captain, and that's a valid story beat. That said, having seen both seasons, I know this won't be the last time they push that boundary, and eventually it will go too far. But here, in this moment, it lands. The idea that Comet moves on its own in the end, possibly knowing what it's doing, adds just enough ambiguity to leave us thinking. Did Spock change its path? Was it destiny all along? And the show wisely doesn't answer that question. So, if the first episode of Strange New Worlds was about assuring fans that this show remembered where it came from, Episode 2 starts doing the real work of integrating that legacy, not just by name-dropping alt characters or quoting TOS moments, but by starting to live in that world. Let's start with Uhura. Her portrayal here is one of the best examples of legacy done right. We're not seeing a shadow of Nichelle Nichols, we're seeing a young woman on her own path, full of uncertainty and brilliance. There's a respect in how she's written and performed, but there's also an evolution. Uhura doesn't feel trapped by canon, she feels informed by it. Then there's musical language. This is pure Trek territory, alien technology that doesn't want to be shot or hacked, but understood. The idea of communication through harmony doesn't just fit Uhura's skill set, it kinda echoes a deeper Trek philosophy. Problems are meant to be solved by listening, by learning, by finding resonance. It's a literal interpretation of the idea that understanding creates peace. And that peace is fragile. As the shepherds remind us, they're not villains, they're just believers. Their faith is intense, but not malicious. It's refreshing to see that Strange New Worlds doesn't default to making every obstacle an enemy. The shepherds are protectors of Machanit. Whether it's living being, a prophecy, or something in between, Trek has always wrestled with science and belief, and this episode honors that tradition by not picking a side. Even the Spock's laughter, controversial as it was, feels like a nod to The Cage and Amok Time. It's a reminder that Spock's emotional journey didn't start in 1967 with cold detachment. It was always complicated, and this show knows that. They're not reinventing him, they are kind of reintroducing him at a different point on that arc. There's a nice little thematic callback to the Inner Light 2, not directly but maybe emotionally. You know, music as a universal bridge. A moment where the noise of the universe quiets down long enough for the connection to happen. The legacy isn't always visual, sometimes it's tonal. Still, not every legacy move hits cleanly. The inclusion of Sam Kirk, as I mentioned earlier, feels more like trivia than storytelling necessity. And that's the tightrope that series has to walk. They have to honor the past, but please don't let it crowd the bridge. Now, Children of the Comet is a good episode. It's thoughtful, well acted, and puts Uhura, one of Trek's most iconic characters, at the center. This isn't a slow episode. That's a problem. It does not slow down. Emotional moments are often rushed. We move from Pike grappling with the weight of his fate to shouting, "I love this job." Well, he wasn't shouting, but he was literally whispering. You get my point. In the span of a scene, at the captain's table, Uhura opens up about the death of her family in a way that kind of feels abrupt and too much too soon. We have the line where she says something along the lines that she's unburdened with conversational boundaries. But that doesn't quite justify dropping the whole trauma file in front of crewmates she barely knows. That's the kind of emotional compression that happens when you're trying to do too much too quickly. Look, even with those pacing flaws, the episode generally works because it spreads the focus. So yes, it's Uhura's episode, but we also learn about Pike, Spock, Ortega's, Nurse Chapel, La'an, and even Sam Kirk. And the time they're given, however short, feels meaningful. Every character picks up a new facet, a new shade, a new beat. That's what gives me the hope. Because unlike some modern Trek discovery, Strange New Worlds doesn't make everything orbit around its captain. Pike is present, but the show is not only his. That's refreshing. And more than anything, this episode reminds us that Trek has always been about more than ship battles and time travel. It's about people. It's about language, it's about culture, and the moments where those things overlap just long enough to matter. In short, this was the first episode where I thought, okay, I see what you're doing, and I think I'd like more of it. And that's it for this review of Season 1, Episode 2 of Strange New Worlds, called The Children of the Comet. Tell me, what do you think about this episode? Did you have fun watching it? Did you have some issues with Uhura? Let me know. Put it in the comments. You do know I read them. So, see you tomorrow as we continue our journey awaiting Season 3. And if you like these reviews, please consider to subscribe, leave a like, and share this with other Trekkies who might also be waiting for Season 3. See you tomorrow, Captains.